Hello, I'm Michael Cantrell, and you are listening to the Prison Officer Podcast, a place to have a conversation about the forgotten cops that work in this country's jails, prisons, and correctional centers. A place for me to try to make sense of a career spent working inside the fence with some of the greatest people that nobody sees or recognizes for the important job they do to keep this world safe. If you love this podcast, hit the follow button, or better yet, share with your family, friends, or coworkers. Hello and welcome back to the Prison Officer Podcast. Before we get to our topic today, I just want to take a minute to thank one of our sponsors. Innovation has always been the key to success of Pepperball, and the Pepperball Blast is just one more way to deliver a payload that will distract, disorient, or incapacitate an inmate. This lightweight, refillable delivery system is perfect for carrying in a holster, in your pocket, or just holding in your hand as part of a cell entry team or a CERT team. Each reloadable blast cartridge contains up to 3 projectiles worth of PAVA powder. When the quick flip safety is turned and depressed, the PAVA powder is pushed out of the tube by a 1.8 gram nitrogen cartridge. This will quickly cover the inmate and saturate the cell. Since there's no actual projectiles deployed upon firing, this is a truly non-lethal product with no impact. To learn more about Pepperball, go to www.pepperball.com or click on the show notes today for more information. Pepperball is the safer option first. Hey, welcome back to the Prison Officer Podcast. This is Mike Cantrell. Today I've got Bryan Antonelli. I've known him for a long time with the Bureau of Prisons. I'm really excited to have him on the podcast. You know, Bryan's a nationally recognized correctional leader and an Air Force veteran with over 32 years of distinguished service in both federal and state law enforcement. To some, he is known as the fixer or the cleanup guy, and I'm sure we'll talk something about that. He built his reputation by restoring order, structure, and leadership to some of the most challenging correctional institutions in the country. He began his career with the Federal Bureau of Prisons as a correctional officer at FCI Fort Dix, and we'll, of course, go through and get to hear about his career. He later, in his career, was selected as chief of the Bureau's Office of Emergency Preparedness. As a matter of fact, he was there just before I went to Washington, D.C., so we overlapped on a lot of stuff there. He was involved in, of course, El Chapo's security protocols after his capture in Mexico, and the Willacy private prison riot happened during that time while he was up there. He was subsequently appointed to warden and complex warden, and would later be the senior deputy regional director and acting regional director of the Northeast region. He now serves with the South Carolina Department of Corrections as Assistant Deputy Director of Prisons, where he continues to lead statewide correctional reform, leadership development, and operational restructuring. He's also a black belt in Gracie Jujitsu. He's a master mason, an Air Force veteran, and the author of a couple of books, one of which we'll discuss both, but one I have read, so we're going to discuss that today. But welcome to the podcast, Bryan.
Hey, thanks, brother. Great to be here, man. It's been a long time coming. We've been chatting for a while, and my schedule's been crazy. Your schedule's been crazy, so thank you.
Absolutely. I'm just happy to get you here. I know you've got a wealth of information. We have a lot of stuff to talk about, but I kind of start my interviews the same way. I always like to hear, where you grew up and how you got into corrections. Did you do it accidentally, or was it something you thought about?
Oh yeah, totally accidentally, to be honest with you. I grew up in a small little town called Nanuet, New York. Avid athlete, couldn't wait to spread my wings and get out of there. So I joined the Air Force right after high school. Did 4 years. It was a great time. I was security forces, but to show how I wasn't intending on going into corrections. I'll remember my recruiter's name to this day, John Vaccaro. I went in to see him. I said, I'd like to be a airborne tactical computer system specialist. So he looked up at his little DOS computer and said, yeah, I've got a report date of about 2 years. I said, okay, I was thinking more like 2 weeks. So I went back to the book and said, about a law enforcement specialist. John said, you don't want to do that. I said, no, yeah, I've always been interested in law enforcement, and he said, I'm telling you, you don't want to do that. He said, there's a reason the score is a 42 and it's the lowest score. It's a cook and a cop have the same score. So yeah. So
interesting.
I said, no, I want to do it. I definitely want to go that route. So, I did it, did 4 years, loved it. It was a good time.
Where were you at?
6 months.
Where were you
Initial
stationed?
assignment was RAF Mildenhall, England. Wonderful, wonderful first station.
Cool.
We got out a lot, got to see the country, played rugby over there. It was a real good time. Then
Yeah.
after that, I transferred to McGuire Air Force Base, New Jersey, which happens to connect. Now you're going to see the connection here. Happens to connect to Fort Dix, where the federal prison is.
Right.
Um, so McGuire was kind of a feeder fish for the Fort Dix prison. So
Mm-hmm.
several staff before me had gone over. So I said, "What the heck? I'll give it a shot." And, I was that guy. Everybody tells you not to do it, but young and stupid. I had an application in with the marshals. So I got into the BOP, and I kept saying, "I'm not going to be here long. I'm going to the marshals. I'm not sticking around." And about a year into it, I was like, "You know what? This is pretty cool. I think I'm going to stick around."
Yeah. So what kind
Here
of
we are.
stuff were you doing in the security forces? Was that actual police work, or were you? I know I have a brother-in-law that did the same thing, but he was stationed watching a missile silo. Basically, was what he did.
Thank God, yes, it was law enforcement. There's
Okay.
two sides. There's law enforcement and security, and you know how we pick on each other. There were some brotherly feuds back and forth, and we would call them rivet counters, and they had all kinds of slang terms for us, and it
Yeah.
is what it is. But good time.
Yeah, but
Definitely
you were
a good
actually
time.
doing so you had a little law enforcement background by the time you went into the bureau.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
But
had you done much around jails and prisons at that time?
Zero.
Okay.
Never even dropped a prisoner off at one, to be honest with you. Short of our holding cell, that was it.
Right. So the first day, tell me about that. That's always interesting.
Yeah, real interesting actually for me. To be honest with you, so I walk into the prison, and there's a kid that went to my neighboring high school that I knew real well. Comes running down the hallway trying to say hi to me, and then he comes back like 15 minutes later and says, "Well, that was pretty stupid." He said, "I'm getting a lot of crap over saying hi to you, so I think we're not going to talk." I said, "That's probably a good idea." So I'll leave his name out. He's good. I think he's out now.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I did the same thing.
It was interesting. Fort Dix was one of those places, not designed to be a prison. They threw a fence around some army barracks. 300 and some inmates per unit, 12-man cells, no lockup. You had, between the two sides, you had over 3,000 inmates and not a single lockup bed. So it was challenging to run, to be honest with you. You had to get pretty creative, but
yeah. And challenging later on in your career or your next steps. Did you feel like you maybe didn't get a good introduction into corrections and had to relearn it next time?
I hate to say it, I almost think you need to relearn it at every level.
Yeah, that's true.
At a low, you don't get the security and the response side. And quite honestly, at the pens, you don't get maybe so much in the communication side.
Absolutely.
It's a lot harder to manage 12-man cells and 360 inmates in a dorm than 128 in a cell that you can lock it in, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So, that was, I think it was a good start, though, to be honest. It broke me in slow and, moved on from there. From there, I went over to FDC Philadelphia. I had to think back there. Just shy of the activation. I think they had a handful of inmates when I got there. Real good experience. It's kind of when I started to delve into the SAS world a little bit. Got a little gang experience, which was real neat. Guy by the name of Bill Jazar actually taught me a lot when I was over there. He'd been around for decades at that point,
Right.
but real good time.
So FDC Philly, that's a high rise, right?
Yes, sir.
Talk to me a little bit
right
about,
off the streets,
because there's a lot of people listening that probably have never been to or around a high rise. How much different is that working in one of those?
It's crazy.
Yeah.
You could work the same block every day and it'll be 60% new inmates fresh off the streets, court runs, guys heading out, got sentenced and heading out to be designated. You never know what you're going to get. Detox, mental health issues, you name it. Every single day at high rise.
Right.
A lot of respect to them, to be honest with you, because you really don't know what you have yet. by the time they get sentenced, to a pen or a medium, you pretty much figured out the inmate's character and how they're going to act. But they come off the streets after times they're still recovering from being high or still high. You just don't know yet,
Right.
So we've had some big names come through there too. What the heck was his name? The Dallas Cowboy, Ozzo Spellman. He came in through there. I don't know what his issues were, but you get some high publicity cases there too.
Sure.
So
Sure. With all the new inmates coming through, it's probably a good place to get your feet wet in SIS.
oh yeah, definitely. And especially up in that area of the country, even to this day, it still changes all the different blood sets and who gets along with who and who doesn't, and it's you really have to be a student in the game and stay after it if you want to be relevant in that world, for sure.
Yeah. I think law enforcement forgets sometimes. Matter of fact, I lead a law enforcement educators and trainers conference last month. Gary York did a class on how much corrections can help law enforcement with intel from the inside.
God, yeah. Yes, sir.
And I think sometimes they forget us. Those inmates talk to us like we're not cops sometimes.
Yeah. And they talk on the phone like, nobody's listening. So, it's a wonderful intel source, the emails, the phone calls, you name it. Obviously they need subpoenas to get the stuff, but it's available, and that communication needs to be there to those on the streets that, we can work together.
Yeah.
So
what was the biggest thing you learned while you were in the shop? What surprised you?
Oh Lord. Tons. There's so many things I could tell you. I mean, dealing with an attempted escape. Somebody had busted out a window on the top floor, and he was all but out, but just couldn't get his head through the window frame. I mean, that's how close he was.
Wow.
Thankfully, Lieutenant was doing his job, paying attention, and caught him standing there with the piece of angle iron that he had broken to bust the window out. But
wow.
Yeah, that could have been a bad day. But he was caught, which is good. Being in the shop, I think that one of the biggest things is we really do have to pay more attention to the gangs and not enable them, but we need to understand, we don't need to start our own trouble as well.
Right.
If you've got two groups, back then Border Brothers, Barrio Aztecas, hit on sight, you had to really pay attention to those tattoos. If not, that unit was going to kick off the moment you put one of them in there.
Yeah.
But,
yeah. We do count on the shops a lot because, one little mistake and you've got a big fight going on the yard. So,
Yes, sir.
So where'd you go from there? What was the next step?
Back as a lieutenant to Fort Dix. It was an easy move. Slid back over there. No real. I will say at this point though, they did finally have a lockup.
Okay.
So that was a huge step in regaining order there. Worked for a gentleman by the name of Mike Babcock, real good captain, taught me a lot, really taught me a lot, to be honest. Learned the whole administrative side of things, which I didn't know at all. I mean, I knew how to run a prison, but, the paperwork and all that was a whole other world.
Yes,
So he got me ready. From there, I lateraled out and opened for Long, California as a lieutenant, all the way across country. That was a big move, to be honest with you. But it was great experience with my first real activation. So from there, I transferred to Long, California. Got my first real full activation in. Actually activated several areas of that institution. Emergency preparedness, SIS, the admin shop, you name it. Activated all three of those, which are probably your major components, which gave me a great foundation. You've got to, establish your contingency plans, establish your post orders, all of that. And, when you build them from the ground up, you intimately understand all of it, which was, great for future use, to be honest.
Sure. Because that became your wheelhouse quite a bit.
Yeah.
Is that where you got the knack for it?
Yeah, I think the EP side of things really is where that really clicked on, and the SAS side, to be honest with you, is really kind of where things started to click there. The next move was the big one, though, and this was really where I started to earn my keep. Got a phone call from a correctional service administrator in Mid Atlantic. Said, "Hey, you want to be the new SIA at Hazleton?"
Oh,
And
wow.
at that point, yeah, at that point, I had no idea where Hazleton was and never heard of it. It was brand new.
Yep.
My answer was, "Where the hell is Hazleton?" I had no idea. So he told me a little bit about it, and I said, "Sure, I'm up for a challenge." So I went there, and oh boy, was that place was in bad shape.
Yeah.
It
was
was in
rocking.
dire need of a. Oh yes, sir. They brought in myself, Lenny Odo, John Krogan, and Joe Driver, all within a month or so of each other. So a complete regime change. And we really did get some solid control. We had some great lieutenants, great staff. Quite frankly, the staff were just begging for leadership. And I'm not talking bad about anybody, but they wanted it. They wanted to get the place back under control. So it wasn't even hard to get their buy-in, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So that was many, many, many long days. Sure, that's also when I had my twin daughters. They were born right about that time. So,
Wow.
um, you're working 12, 14, 16 hours a day, 6, 7 days a week, plus 2 brand new kids. So that was an interesting time, to be honest with you.
Yeah. The inmates at that place were looking for leadership too. Sometimes people forget, they want to live in a safe place. Most of them. Now, we've always got that section over there that doesn't, but a lot of them, they're looking for somebody to come in and keep things running good.
Yeah, definitely. They were definitely looking forward to it. There were several homicides right before we got there. Even one right as we got there, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
We learned a lot too while we're there. And I could tell you one lesson I learned is sometimes you can't keep pushing, right?
Mm-hmm.
We were doing the right thing. We got things under control. Might have been going a little fast, to be honest with you. So what we ended up doing was having a pretty large scale work and food strike at one point during our take back of the institution. Not to say we did anything wrong, but we probably did go a little bit fast, to be honest with you.
Pushback from the inmates?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, we were definitely doing the right thing, 100%. But maybe the speed was a little fast. If we would have slowed it down and spread it out a little more, we probably would not have had that issue.
Okay. Well,
So,
I mean, that's what experience gives us,
Yeah.
And
yes,
so
sir.
we can make better decisions next time.
Yes, sir. What else? So, experienced my first and second homicide there. And really, to show the whole prison subculture without names or situations or anything. The first homicide was over a $35 debt. An inmate at another yard, it was just the principle of the respect, had checked in and not given any names up, owing another inmate $35.
Yeah.
Well, because he didn't cooperate and give any names up, they ended up at Hazleton together, and he killed him over $35.
Yeah. That's the part they don't show in the movies and the TV shows.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. But that was a very challenging yard, very DC inmate heavy, strong Mexican mafia and Sereno presence.
Mm-hmm.
A couple hundred between Emmy Serenos, New Mexico Syndicate. They were all running together, sprinkling some Paisa here and there that were running in with the Serenos. So
sure,
that was a heavy yard. And you wonder why there was so much violence. I mean, there was 300 to 400 DCs alone. So,
wow.
And those are notoriously violent inmates.
Well, yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Yes, sir.
So where was the next? Did you?
From there, it was, man, what a downshift. This was my hardest shift of my whole career, was going from Hazleton to captain at Safford, Arizona.
Oh, wow.
Went from 1,000,000 miles an hour to the slowest yard you could ever ask for, to be honest with you. Basically a camp with a fence around it. It was, it's low security technically, but nothing ever happens there. Very well run yard. A great bunch of staff. I was very lucky to work with some of the best staff in the world, man.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I'll leave his name out just because I don't want the union getting mad at him. But so the union president at the time comes to see me. He says, you don't know me. I don't know you. He said, we're not here to file any stupid stuff. You can continue doing roll calls because I was getting ready to kill the roll calls because we had already lost that portable settlement. He said, here you can continue doing roll calls and you will never see us file on that. He said, we love the information. We appreciate our jobs. We want our jobs. And he kept his word. They've never filed on that ever.
Wow. That was such a loss for the Bureau as a whole.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That was, yeah, definitely. I mean, it was our number one source of information, uniform inspection, making sure people are fit for duty. Nobody's coming in intoxicated, inebriated, whatever, and you lose all that,
Yeah.
So, but
yeah,
it was
I
great
used to look forward to it. I was always one of those people that showed up early anyway, but
yes, sir.
Yeah, I was sitting there in the chair ready to hear what was going on and prepare myself. And
yes, sir.
We didn't get to do that as much afterwards.
No, and you also didn't make the connections, to be honest with you. You lost a lot of personal connections. The whole, I call it the Bureau family, the brotherhood, sisterhood. People actually made plans at roll call to, go out after work or, go play on the softball team or whatever the case may be. And when that died, a lot of that went with it.
Yeah. It's too bad.
Yes, sir.
Where to next?
Cool. Then it was back up to the big leagues. From there, captain at USP McCreary. And that's right when it had become a penitentiary. It opened as a medium. And then I grabbed it and had just become a pen. So, that was interesting for me. That was my first Texas yard, where we had Texas Syndicate, Texas Emmy,
Sure.
Mexican-Me. So that was a whole new world, Norteños, Nuestra Familia, the whole opposite side of what I'd ever been used to. So it was good to learn both sides of the coin, of who can walk with who and who can't. And, that was a very, very good yard again. The staff were great. In fact, I can't. There's no place that I'll talk about that I won't say I had the best staff I could have ever asked for. Made the job easy. They really did. I'm still to this day, I'm one of those that likes to get out there. Even to this moment, unless I absolutely have to, you will not see me in a shirt and tie.
Right.
I'll be in a polo shirt, 511s, and I'll be shaken down right next to you. Mm-hmm. Crawling under the beds. I don't, grabbing hooch or buck or whatever anyone calls it out from the cells. That's what I do. I'm a CO by heart, man. So, to this day, you'll still see that. But
leading from the front.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no doubt. And McCreary, in fact, there's one example I'll give there. I was in a suit and tie for one occasion, and I quite frankly can't remember the occasion. But I went out to sword training, and the leader was nowhere to be found, and they were running the obstacle course. So I took off my my suit jacket, and I ran the obstacle course with the team in dress shoes and a tie. Now I will freely admit I skipped the what's the sideways rope, the Mary Jane.
Yeah.
Skipped the Mary Jane, but there's some good pictures of me somewhere going up the tough one in a suit and a tie, and a shirt and a tie,
sure,
with dress shoes on. So that was pretty comical, but I didn't hear the end of that for a while.
Yeah, that's great that you went out there. I had a discussion in a class a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about how important it is for leadership to go out and see the teams, because someday. Oh, yeah. You're going to have to make decisions based on what they can truly do, not what somebody's told you they can do. And from an emergency preparedness standpoint, I know you understand that, how important that is.
And when you flip that coin over, they have to trust your decisions.
That's true.
That they have to have full faith and full buy-in that you're leading them in the right direction. And if you're not out there at least kicking some dirt with them, you're not going to have that.
Yeah.
You're just simply not going to be there.
Yeah, absolutely. So were you getting the idea they kept sending you to these places that needed, was this the beginning of you going, they keep sending me places that need a little fixing?
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I really, to this day, that I've never referred to myself as that. To be honest
Okay.
with you, that came from several other bureau staff. I, I- you know, I just think, I'm security minded.
Hmm.
I stick to the basics. Um, I don't do anything extravagant, and that's how you fix prison.
Right.
You can't have, and don't get me wrong by this. I agree with programming, right? But you can't have any of that programming without discipline, order, and control in a prison. It's completely useless without that. So I've always stuck to that. I've had people around me that were good and experts in the programming. I'll give you the calm and the order so you can do it. And that's kind of the way I've always liked to approach it.
Yeah. And I
But
think the inmates appreciate that too. The ones that
yeah,
want it.
the ones that actually want to go home love it. If you're looking to further your criminal career and be a better drug dealer, then you're not going to like me. But
Right.
plain and simple. But there were several of those. But you know, we dealt with that. It's all good. And McCreary was also challenging for its remote location.
Hmm.
That was really out there. Dry county. Uh, had to drive an hour and a half to Lexington if you wanted a beer. Um,
Wow.
that that was super interesting. Not that we're huge drinkers or anything, but I mean,
Yeah.
listen, if you want a beer with dinner, it's not an option, and that's when you miss it. So,
I don't think I
but
knew that about McCrary.
yeah, it may be. I think they changed the term now. I think they call it a moist county now. So I think certain restaurants are allowed to sell it. They've progressed a little bit, but
It's hilarious.
yeah, yes, sir. But
So,
um, after McCreary was another activation. Learned a ton up there. I activated Berlin, New Hampshire as an associate warden.
yeah,
Um, and you'd be amazed that, yes, it was freezing. Yes, it snows a ton. But man, was it outdoors paradise up there. Some
I
of the
did a
best
pepper
hunting
ball
on the planet.
class 2 years ago up there. First time I got to see it. It's gorgeous.
Oh,
Nicest
yeah.
people you'd ever meet.
Oh, yeah. The locals up there would give you the shirt off their back. We had, matter of fact, I was talking to the old sheriff and chief of police. He's been both last week. We still keep in touch. Um, he's actually considering a career in corrections now. So I'm definitely hope he gets what he's looking for. So I can't be specific there, but
Yeah,
he's definitely heading in the right direction. But up there it was wonderful. Again, learned a lot. Activating at the executive staff level. I had a great warden. Things where Deb Schultz was our activating warden up there. She amazing to work for. Tom Warlick. I don't know if you remember him. He was my counterpart.
mm-hmm.
So yeah, we had a real good time up there. The inmates were fine. They didn't want to be there. Just to be honest with you, we had a hard time staffing the place just because of how remote it was. Um, and no matter what incentives you threw, just the applicant pool just wasn't there, just because of how far north it was.
Sure.
Um,
But
you
where
know,
else could
um,
you see a moose on the perimeter road?
we had a moose in the perimeter fence
Oh, really?
before the fence was closed. Oh yeah, bear on property. The campers would not go out to get contraband because of the bear.
Right.
They were scared to death to go out in the woods at night. Um, it was, but I will tell you, it's -30. I'll give you an example. Year before I left, we had a barbecue planned for Memorial Day. So mind you, late May, we had to cancel it because of 3 inches of snow. Still,
Yeah.
but it was great ATV riding. We got one of those side by sides up there. The wife and kids and I would all go out on rides on the weekends, and wonderful
Nice.
trail system. Great outdoors area. So it was good. It was definitely a real good time up there.
Yeah.
But
How many years you stay up there?
was it 3? 2.5, 3, something like that. Well,
Okay.
wasn't too long.
Right.
Yeah. But from there, that's when I went down to DC as the chief of emergency preparedness.
Big job.
A very big job, and to be honest, for me, it was really personally tough because I will admit, while I got up in New Hampshire, I got fat and lazy. I was in the worst shape of my life. I mean, I let it go. I stopped working out. It was not me. To
Right.
be honest with you. So then you show back up in DC, and you've got all these sort teams, and DCT teams that you're providing, trying to make training recommendations to, and you're the out of shape guy. So that was for me, that was personally challenging. As soon as I left there, I kicked myself in the butt and got my tail back in shape because that was, again, I stress this in the book. You have to lead yourself first. If you're not practicing what you preach,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's useless. Um, and sometimes, others can tell you, hey, you're getting a little big there, man.
Yeah.
But until you decide yourself that, hey, well, what are you doing, buddy? Get back in the gym, get disciplined, reset, hit the reset here. Um, it definitely takes some discipline and dedication, but um, loved it though. DC was a great assignment. Worked for a bunch of good people up there. Several regimes. I was there for a while. Got to go on security assessments, like you mentioned, with Chapo. Security assessment with the Saipan prisons. Got to go down there and check out Guam and Saipan. That was pretty neat. Yeah.
How different is that?
Saipan looks just like ours, to be honest with you. Guam was very different. Very, very different. Not saying anything bad, just different. Uh, but no, Saipan, you could almost interchange the way they run and the way we run. It's very, very similar.
Interesting.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That Chapo detail was neat. We flew in. It was myself and one of the facilities leadership down there. I'll leave his name out. Um, and they actually flew us into Altiplano where he was on a helicopter on a Black Hawk. And that was super neat just to see where he was. Without saying too much. They made a lot of structural changes based on what had happened when he got out. They took a lot of corrective action and listened to our facility staff's advice on rebuilding it. But they also took some strong advice on how to keep them in custody and who should watch them and even where to move them,
Right.
you know, uh, in their own country.
Right.
So it was good that they sought some advice. That was good to go there.
Yeah. The resources he had access to, you can't
Limitless.
imagine.
Yeah. Absolutely limitless. Basically his own army if he wanted.
Yeah.
Uh, so we came to the agreement. We put him, without saying where, we put him up in the New York area.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and obviously everything worked out because he's tucked away right now,
Yeah.
peacefully and quietly. So whenever you don't hear about it on the news, that's a good thing for us, right?
Absolutely.
We don't want to be the headline for damn sure.
Okay.
But
So, did you get to do anything for the teams? I mean, that was one of the. I got interrupted by COVID while I was up there. I mean, I went up there with plans of helping DCT and sort and everything. What did you get to do while you were up there?
So we restructured, and if you remember the complex that was kind of getting put together at Tucson for the SORT training, it was kind of like the hub. That was started by the teams out there. It was actually started before me.
Okay.
But we picked up on that and built on it.
Yeah, we kept that going while I was there.
It's beautiful. Yeah. Revamped the multi-weapons course. That was, and we made it realistic. Some of it was in the past. Those static drills are just, turn, shoot, turn, shoot, turn, shoot. It was, you could train a smart monkey to do that. But, we worked on shooting and moving, staying on target, obviously not lasering anybody, safety issues. But the big one was shooting and moving forward and back. Like after, let's say, after you do a delivery and exchange for either hostage or food or whatever you're dropping off, you're moving backwards, and you've got to still have eyes on target while you're doing that. And that was a big focus of, maintaining integrity and safety of the teams at all times, not just, one direction.
Right. When I really got into breaching, that was when it brought to light for me, corrections, you can't train a tactical team for corrections the same way you do a SWAT team. When they breach and they go in a house, they can go back out any way they want. Corrections, You're coming back out the same hole usually. You got to secure that hole, and you got to get things back to normal. So it's a different thought process. And much like you're talking about.
Well, and one of the other big things, I just remembered this, you talked about a SWAT team, is what brought it up, is we got all the new equipment ordered to include the suppressors and everything else. That was a long time coming, because anyone that's ever fired a service weapon indoors understands that you're not just going to have ringing ears if you fire that thing in a concrete corridor. I mean, you're going to incapacitate everybody around you. Nobody's going to hear anything on the radio. So we got the obviously the hearing protection, the suppressors, the stuff that attaches to radios.
Mm-hmm.
It basically made them a fully functional team. The D-balls or PEC-15s on the M4s. Some night vision for your snipers, clip-on stuff, so you didn't have to completely change your optic. But it basically gave the team full 24-hour capabilities, because prior to that, they were not 24-hour capable.
Right. Absolutely.
So
that's cool.
But that was, it was a good time. I really, really enjoyed that assignment, to be honest with you. I will tell one story from that time, and it actually has nothing to do with emergency preparedness. It's when I went down to Guam and Saipan. It was myself, the director, I'll leave his name out at the time, several ADs, and we had just toured their Nagatna. I'm going to butcher the name, Nagatna. It's a name they use down there, their correctional facility. And quite frankly, I wasn't very impressed, right? But of course, we can't say that.
Mm-hmm.
So we walk into what's supposed to be a private town hall with their governor and some local key leadership. And as soon as we sit down on cue, the media comes out, cameras, everything.
Wow.
It was a total, complete setup.
Right.
And if you remember one of our directors, there was a negative Saturday Night Live skit about him not long before that, about cell size. I don't know if you remember seeing that.
Mm-hmm.
When they asked him, they said, "Director, as the leader of the world's largest correctional organization, you just toured our facility. What was your opinion of the facility?" And of course, he can't. He's not going to publicly, discuss that. That's going to be a private conversation. And there's a long pause with no answer. So then, governor repeats the question, and there was a pause again. And I'm going to say it was 5 to 10 seconds at this point. And I jumped in and I said, "Director, would you mind if I took this question for you?" Huge risk, right? Because I could have ended my career politically right there. But it was uncomfortable, the pause. And I didn't want to let him, because he couldn't answer that. Sure. I could better. So I'll leave the attorney's name out, but I never saw a head snap in my direction so fast in my life. But the director said, "Sure, Bryan, go ahead." So I said, "Well, Governor, in addition to coming down here to represent correctional programs, my full-time job at the Bureau of Prisons is Chief of Emergency Preparedness. Mm-hmm. Part of our jobs there to conduct assessments of correctional facilities, which we spend at least 40 to 80 hours reviewing blueprints, plans, procedures, etc., and at least another 40 hours inside the facility. So, sir, we were in your facility for about an hour. You can't ask us to offer any sort of an effective, informed decision on your facility in that time frame." So he took it and let it go. The ride back, we jokingly had a big kid car and a little kid car. I was in a little kid car at the time. Mm-hmm. And nobody would speak to me. So finally, about halfway back to the hotel, I cracked a joke. I said, "Well, I think in a few minutes we're going to find out either I'm okay or my career's over." And
One of the
everybody
two.
laughed. You know what I mean? I mean, what can you do at that point? You know, it's done. You know. Um, so anyway, actually, he was waiting for me in the lobby, and he actually all he wanted to do was say thank you.
Yeah,
He thanked me for helping him out there. He was not prepared for the media coming out, and none of us were, to be honest with you.
sure.
Um, and I've always, to this day, I've always thought very highly of that man for that, because he could have easily said, this was on statewide TV down there, so he easily could have said, who are you to speak for me, and had a big ego about it. He was very, very appreciative, and I was, I've not forgotten that. He was a great man to work for.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I know who you're talking about, and he is a great man. I learned a lot from him too.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So I'd like to, before we talk about where you're at now, let's talk a little bit about, you said you came back from getting out of shape. I know
Yes,
that
sir.
you've gotten big into jujitsu again. I don't think you
Yes,
left
sir.
it, but it's kind of come back in your life. Is that right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yes, sir.
Tell me about that and
Jiu-jitsu and powerlifting.
how that affects your career and your mentality, all of it. I mean,
I think a lot of people fear, submissions and chokeholds and all this. They're worried about legalities. I'm going to guarantee that you'll find that anyone that's actually trained will use it less. They will make better decisions in all aspects of their jobs. Imagine, I'm in the heavyweight class, so imagine a 280-pound behemoth who's also a black belt on top of you trying to choke you out. If you don't relax and make solid decisions, you're done.
right.
You're absolutely done. So I think one of the biggest things that jiu-jitsu gives you is the ability to make tough decisions in the worst possible scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
I firmly believe that there's a discipline, there's a humility that has to come with it. Um, there's days you're going to be the hammer, but there's a heck of a lot more days you're going to be the nail.
Right.
When you're training anyway. So, I'm hooked. I'll be doing the World Championships, the Masters, the old man World Championships again this summer. Didn't fare so well last year. I'm actually trying to drop a weight class, see if I can get out of the, as I call it, the big boy division. So we'll see. There are some monsters out there.
Right.
Last year I lost to Fabiano Schirner, who I believe is 13-time world champion. So
that doesn't feel too bad.
So, no. I mean, no excuses, right? I always want to win, right? But I mean, I also thanked him at the end for sharing the mat with me. I mean, what do you say to a guy like that?
Yeah.
So
I was going through a book. Have you ever read Prisons and Beyond by the first director of the BOP?
I have not, actually.
So there's a part in there, and I'm going to read this because I think it's interesting. I think you'll get a kick out of it too. So Jiu-Jitsu was taught in the original correctional officer training. Did you know that back in the 50s?
No, sir.
Yeah. So here's just a little story. I think it's pretty cool. So they had a new recruit. Good use was made of the physical training portion of the course. Later, one of the graduates of this course doing guard duty at a prison camp was sent without a gun or club into open country to hunt for two prisoners who had walked off. He came upon them suddenly in the dark and held out his hand as though he had a revolver, and they put up their hands. As he approached, though, the prisoners saw that he was unarmed and rushed him, was the way they wrote it. One of them with a dangerous knife. The guard not only spurred off the attack of the prisoners, with approved jiu-jitsu fashion, he took the knife of one of them, whirling it to the ground to the side of the road, captured the man with a left hammer lock, and when the other prisoner attacked him, he took possession with a right hammer lock and led them back to the camp. It is impossible to discover the inherent characteristics of a man with such courage, dependability, and alertness. But much can be said to stimulate judgment. And he's talking about jujitsu. Much can be said to stimulate judgment, initiative, and resourcefulness to such measure.
Yes, sir.
That was, what, 70 years ago?
Yeah, and things don't change. I mean, it is what it is. I'm going to go back and read that now for darn sure.
Yeah,
I'm a
page
huge reader, and
168.
I've well, I'm going to read the whole thing. That's that's really cool. I've seen that the FBI and the marshals have adopted a jujitsu curriculum,
Mhm.
and I'm very hopeful that for the safety of the staff and quite frankly the safety of the inmates, that the bureau gets into some sort of jujitsu training. For anyone listening to this, if your agency doesn't train you, I fully recommend you go out and train.
Yeah.
Fully recommend it. And quite frankly, even the training you'll get with your agencies is not going to be anywhere enough to be proficient. It'll be a starter or an exposure at best. But when it becomes muscle memory, that's when you're relaxed and that's when you're confident. And quite frankly, that's when you'll actually use less force because you're confident in yourself in most situations.
Yeah. I was talking to Tim Fosnot last episode, and he teaches for Arc Tactical, and him and I got in a discussion about the way the public sees us on these videos on YouTube and stuff. And you see so many officers that don't have the ability to control the inmates they're fighting, or even three or four officers not able to control an inmate. And when you have those skills, which I have never taken jujitsu, but I thought the state of Missouri did a really good job of teaching me arm bars and stuff very early on. Not just offensive, but some tactics to control an inmate. And we look so much better when we can get immediate control, when we can protect them, not hurt them, and get control of them.
And we're calm, we're not screaming. It is better and it looks better.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yes, sir.
So tell me about
the other thing.
Go aheid.
I was going to say the other thing I've recently got into is competitive powerlifting.
That's what I was going to ask about.
So, as a matter of fact, I'm doing a heavy bench day tomorrow. I'm trying to break the old man bench record. Right now, 275, it's 860 on open powerlifting. Tomorrow, I'm hoping to get around 700. Brand new shirt, breaking in a little bit, so we'll see. Still a ways off, but at this point, I'll be top 5 in the world if I do that in a meet.
Nice.
Which, it's getting there. I'm one of those people that's never satisfied. I've got to push myself. And my wife, she's an amazing partner. We're up at 4:30 every morning. We hit the gym together. She's as dedicated, if not more, than I am. So it makes eating, working out, everything's easy when your partner's doing it with you. So, and that's the other thing people don't realize is so much of being healthy and being in shape is almost purely diet. Prioritize protein. Do not listen to what you've been told for the last 30, 40 years. Protein is the key. Keep your protein intake high. Keep your sugar intake low. Fats moderate. You're good to go.
Yeah. I've always loved strength sports. So I love watching your posts on there and stuff. I used to compete in Highland games. That's what some of those swords are back there. But
yes, sir.
Yeah, I love strength
throwing
sports.
The fence bowls and yes, sir.
Yeah, because it's personal. In most of those sports, it's you against you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So yes, doing all that, when do you have time?
That took forever. And to be honest with you, the second book is stuff I pulled out of the first book.
Mm-hmm.
That was just either too long or didn't fit the same. It wasn't really leadership. It was more prison management on how to run the prison. So I took that all out, reorganized it, and the second book wasn't really a full second endeavor. It was stuff I retracted from the first book, to be honest. That's took me, God, when did I start that? At least 5 years of dabbling back and forth. 2022 is when I got the majority of it done. Right before I retired, ended up having my C5-6 and C6-7 replaced with metal discs. There's metal pucks inserted in there now. They cut you, move your throat over, put metal metal discs in between your vertebrae. Which it's much better than fusion. You retain the majority of your mobility, or at least some of it anyway, versus a fusion. You're very stiff.
Mm-hmm.
But that's when I got the majority of the book writing done. I had a lot of time where I couldn't do much. So I was laid up and just sat my butt in front of the computer and got after it. So,
I had a couple of things in here when you touched on a couple of things that I haven't heard other leaders talk about. So I want to, pick your brain a little bit. One of them is tactfully pushing back against poor decisions. And I think everyone listening has probably been in that situation where there's a poor decision being made. You may not be in the position to stop it, but how do you tell me a little bit about that?
So you have to be careful, right? Because if you push too hard, so there's also another book I recommend reading, The Art of the Indirect Approach by Liddell Hart. It's an older book. He's a British guy.
Okay.
But if you were to made a decision that I didn't agree with, and I came directly at you, Mike, what the hell are you thinking? You're instantly going to be defensive. Versus if I look at it, maybe we talk to some of the teams. Hey, Mike, I got your idea. I see it. It's on point, but the guys have a way that they really prefer to do things, still achieving the same end goal. Could you take a look at the ops order that they prepared?
Mm-hmm.
Big difference to me coming directly at you and say, hey, I don't agree with this. This is dumb, whatever. You have to realize a few things. One, you're dealing with another human's ego, right? Which everybody has an ego. I don't care how much we try to check it. Every single one of us has an ego.
Sure.
Number two, you have to stay in the game.
Mm-hmm.
If I piss you off enough and you're my boss, you're not going to hear anything I say in the future. In fact, you may take me off count and move me somewhere, right? So then nobody's going to push back. So it's got to be delicate. I'm not saying go question your boss on everything, and there's some things that, quite frankly, aren't worth the fight.
Right.
But if it's something that's worth the fight, that's when I still say approach delicately, but get your point across in a non-direct manner. And I call it leading up channel is really what I call it.
I know that you and I are both fans of Jocko, and I heard him talk about.
Yes.
Yeah, he talked about, you get these people who go, well, I'm not going to be part of this. Well, if you pull yourself out of it, you can't protect the people below you. You can't protect your team. Right. You have no influence at that point.
Right. And then they put in a yes person in place, and it's over.
Right.
So, it's delicate balance, and you really do have to pick your battles. But when it's important to you and or your team, I still say I wouldn't approach it directly head on, at least not right away. Offer an alternative. Hey, boss, would you mind just taking a look at this and really trying to build the morale and future leaders of the team? They developed this plan. It'll achieve the same end result. I really believe it'll also help their morale. And more often than not, they're at least going to read it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
it's one of my weaknesses. That's another reason why I chose that one. I'm not always the best at being tactful in some of those situations.
I have to make myself. But it's good you know that, right? Because I'm the same way. Sometimes I want to jump right head on at something, but we have to be aware of our own weaknesses as well, and again, stay in the game. So
another thing I wanted to ask you about, just because, I talk to a lot of leaders on here, and one of the subjects that I haven't really drilled down on is decision-making, and you have decision-making frameworks there. So tell me about some of your thoughts on when you make decisions. How do you do that? What are you looking at?
So one of the biggest things I use is called an OODA loop. observe, and Jocko, as you said, talks about this at length.
Yeah.
Observe, orient, decide, and act. And it's almost a constant cycle. And when you really get into it, you can almost have several OODA loops inside of maybe one big OODA loop when you really start getting deep into things. But starting off, what that process does, it avoids decision making paralysis.
Mm.
So the third step is you decide. You have to make a damn decision. You've talked about it, all this. You observed, you develop, at least a concept. You're deciding, and the fourth step is act. So if it needs to be tweaked, you're going to pick it up on your next loop or observe, orient, decide. Do I need to tweak it? Do I not need to tweak it? Act or maintain status quo. Right.
Right.
So that's one of the biggest and the easiest methods to teach. It's been around. I should know it was an Air Force pilot, but it was a pilot from
Boyd?
somewhere in the 50s, I believe, that came up with it.
Yeah.
Did you say Floyd?
Boyd?
Yeah, that's probably
Colonel Boyd.
That might be right.
Yeah.
That might be right. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think people do get stuck. The OODA loop doesn't just go around once. It's spinning like a record. Sir. It's going round and round.
Yes, sir. And it's, it's great to teach your staff too, because then they don't get scared to make decisions. And while I say that, I know it's probably touched on, it's definitely touched on in the book, but if your staff make a mistake because they made a decision where they were trying to do the right thing, don't kill them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, have that talk with them. Hey, man, you need to find another way to do this because that one didn't work, brother. They make the same mistake 2 or 3 times. Then maybe we have a different conversation, right? But the last thing you want is staff that are scared to make a decision, or staff that run to their supervisor. This is going on. What do I do? Well, why do I have you? So.
I talked about that in a keynote I did a few years back, and the way I picture it is you've got one of those old Roman boats, where everybody's got an oar, and if you reach down and slap somebody every time they make a little mistake, pretty soon you're not going anywhere because everybody quits rowing. That's all they do.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And the other thing, they're talking about the decision-making process, and this may or may not be where you're going with this, but I also try not to make every damn decision.
Mm-hmm.
There's a story in the book, and names are out on purpose. When I first showed up at Hazleton the second time as warden, right after the Whitey Bulger murder, I should say, I was walking around, and there were 2 AWs, and probably the captain and a few other people walking with me. And one of the AWs was just in my ear the whole time. This is Hazleton. We don't have time to do all this. Like I'd never worked there before and didn't understand how busy the place was.
Right.
I was just ignoring it. Didn't say a word. What I left out is the first day when I was politely asked to go up there. I drove up from Williamsburg. I was actually on vacation in Myrtle Beach, sitting in our fifth wheel, and all of a sudden my truck started and I was going north. So I ended up there and got there at like 5 o'clock. I was like, well, screw it. I'm not going to go, sit in a bar or sit in a hotel. I might as well go to prison.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm walking around and one thing, like on lockdowns, we normally don't do showers at nighttime. There's less staff, and
right.
I walk into one of the housing units and they're about halfway done. They weren't even close. The staff didn't even know who I was at that point. A bunch of new kids. So I jumped in. I started helping them pull inmates for showers. We got it done. And I think we're done like 8:30, 9 o'clock at night.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy. It wasn't working. So I mentioned that to, the AWs and the captain that next morning. I said, hey, man, you got to look at that. Because whatever we're doing, something's not going right there.
Sure.
So on the third day, the one AW says to the other one, he says, hey, get all the execs together in the warden's conference room at 2 o'clock, and we'll develop a new shower plan. I turned around and I said, stop. You've been telling me for 3 days how busy we are and how we don't have time to walk around and get the pulse of the place and see what's going on. I'll say the one guy's name. I said, Ryan. 2 senior officers, grab a union steward, grab a lieutenant, put them in a room together, ask them to write you a shower plan, and if it makes half a bit of sense, enact it. So he looks at me, he laughs, and he goes and does it. Because he had worked for me before, so
Right.
he knows how I like to operate. So they do it. We take an hour the next morning to brief the plan, and a staff recall. So you lose an hour of the day there.
Mm-hmm.
They were done with showers by about 1:30, 2 o'clock. Not because their plan was 7 hours more efficient, because it was their plan. They were bought in, and they wanted to look good.
Sure.
And that's the goal, man. You want their buy-in. They even skipped eating lunch to finish the showers earlier and then ate afterwards.
Yeah.
Just so, their plan would look that much better. And, yeah, there are times when we have to snipe decisions. I'm a big leadership capital believer, right?
Mm-hmm.
So every time we snipe one of those decisions, we're burning capital.
Yep.
Anytime we get our staff involved and we get them involved in the planning process, we're building capital. So you get so much more. Another example there, I was looking to find a way to copy the mail.
Mm-hmm.
Bureau had never done that before. Full scale copying, especially at a large complex.
Sure.
We were getting slaughtered with paper drugs coming in. At that point, drones weren't an issue yet. Probably very close to being an issue, but they weren't yet.
Right.
At least that we knew of anyway. So, we had some ideas, but we pulled all the mailroom staff in, a couple of the union folks, lieutenants, put them in a room. To copy Jocko, we gave him the commander's intent,
Mm-hmm.
and all the senior leadership left. So, here's your resources, here's your intent. Let us know what your plan is. And I figured it would be a week or two, to be honest with you.
Right.
By 3 o'clock, they called us back in and said, hey, we've got a plan. It's going to work. Not only did they not ask us for more bodies, they
Mm-hmm.
gave us 2 bodies back. So, they consolidated the mailroom in one location.
Yep.
And it worked like a charm. There
Yep.
was not one issue with it. And again, it was their plan. Full disclosure, I would not have thought of what they thought of. That was solid staff making solid decisions, and they know those institutions better than we do, whether we
Absolutely.
want to admit it or not.
Yeah.
But,
And I think a lot of people, when they get in those administrative positions, and you kind of touched on it earlier with the analysis paralysis, they get so
Yes, sir.
scared of making a mistake that Colin Powell, he's got a quote out there that he makes decisions when he has between 40 and 70% of the information. If he makes it with less than 40% of the information, he doesn't have enough. If he waits till he's got 100%, the moment to make the decision's gone. And we have a lot of administrators that want everything. They want 100%. And you shouldn't be making good decisions that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, sir. And, the other thing you fail to do when you make all the decisions is and I'm going to say this, and I'm not shooting at anybody, but this is what the Bureau of Prisons is dealing with right now. You do not develop your next generation of leadership when you treat your staff like robots and you make every decision from the top.
Yep.
And that's a leadership vacuum that they are dealing with right now. And it's going to take a minute to fix that.
Yeah, it is. It is. We'll hope that some changes are going to happen and things are going to move forward there, because I love the Bureau.
Oh, I'm very confident. I'm very confident in that new director. I know he actually doesn't have that much correctional experience, but listening to him speak on your podcast, talking about, you have to understand what you don't know, how he leads. I'm very confident that he's going to be a strong leader for that agency. So
I saw him walking around the mock riot, and of course that's West Virginia's big thing down there, but he came down and he wasn't standing up front and everybody. He was up there talking to everybody, asking questions, seeing what's in there. He was very inquisitive. I enjoyed meeting him there.
Yeah, he seems like a great guy. I've never met him, but hearing him speak, he sounds like exactly what's needed, to be honest.
Yeah.
So,
So, what's next for Bryan Antonelli? I know you got another
um,
book. Let's talk.
yeah, that's
Seize, clear,
out.
build, hold, regaining
Yes,
control
sir.
of troubled prisons.
So seize clear, build hold is how I put it for the prisons. It's modified a little bit. Seize clear, hold, build
Mm-hmm.
is the military's counterinsurgency model. That is what that's modeled after. And if you think about organized gang activity, drug sales, gang activity, counterinsurgency,
Yeah,
that's exactly what it is. That's how we deal with it. That's the model I've used at Hazleton, at Coleman, at Reno, McCreary, um, Williamsburg, you name it. And it's proved effective every single time. Now,
sure.
I didn't have the flashy name for it then, but that's exactly what we did. Um,
Right.
what's next for me? Nothing. I'm in my career. I'm happy where I am right now with the state.
Yeah.
Um, I'll do this as long as I want to stay gainfully employed, and then I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm just going to enjoy life with the family, and my kids are staying right here. They're going to college at University of South Carolina, both of them. 20 minutes from home, so we're all Gamecock fans. That, um, but yeah, no, maybe if I ever get tired of this, which I really enjoy what I do right now. If I ever get tired of it, maybe some part-time consulting or something on the side, but that'll be when we want to be honest with you. It's just, the Bureau of Corrections has been a wonderful career. I know we take a lot of bad press. I recommend it to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
I really do. In the right organization. Anyway, um, we are, we're blessed to be where we are, to be honest with you. So, and you too, you had a wonderful career, brother.
Mm-hmm.
Something to be proud of for sure. So, um,
It was. I still get phone calls and emails from people that I affected. And
yes,
that's
sir.
the huge thing. But I see South Carolina. You guys are on LinkedIn or on Facebook, and you guys are doing good stuff out there. That's
Yeah,
you're
we
enjoying
have a
work.
wonderful.
Yeah.
We have a wonderful director. Wonderful man to work for. Super aggressive as far as getting us resources, pay raises for staff, technology. You name it. He's probably the leader nationwide in the push for cell phone interdiction and drone interdiction.
Yep.
Um, Amazing man to work for. Some great staff out here. And this is one of those. I won't get too much. I promised them I wouldn't talk about South Carolina. But one of the things I
Okay.
love is we don't have the age restriction, right? So we have some staff. Our director of security, for example, has over 50 years of correctional experience.
Okay.
That is, I mean, he's a
It's
walking
amazing.
encyclopedia.
Yeah.
Yeah, um, the thing I like is they don't run their experience out the door.
Mm-hmm.
Just for a fictitious age number that may or may not be accurate as to whether or not you can still perform the job. Um, I couldn't be happier. My direct boss is wonderful. He's got probably 30, 40 years himself in. I've got 32. My counterpart's 35, 37, I think. So,
Nice.
I mean, there is a ton of experience down here, and everybody is great to work with. So, the line staff have dealt with a lot
Yeah.
because before they got their pay raises, it was hard to staff this place.
Yeah.
But now that they're very competitively paid down here, so especially for this area.
Yeah.
So
Well, I love seeing that all across the country. That's one thing that this has done is it finally bumped up pay for a lot of people, 20, 30, 40% in some places. So, yeah, that corrections needed it. They deserved it. I'm glad to see that they're getting it.
Yes, sir.
Well, thank you, Bryan, for coming on here tonight. I'll get in the show notes. I'll have Bryan's books. I'm actually going to put that one book. I wrote it down that you mentioned.
The art of the indirect approach.
Yeah,
yes, sir.
Yeah. I'll put a link in there for that too, for anybody that wants to look it up. I know you probably don't want to get bugged at work. Do you have a contact in the book or an email or anything?
I don't.
Okay.
I am on LinkedIn, Bryan Antonelli.
Okay.
So feel free to reach out there. I do respond to pretty much every message I get on there.
I'll put that link on the show notes so they can, if somebody wants to reach out and say, hey.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you so much.
Listen, I'm honored you had me on, brother. Great talk to you, and always here if you ever need anything in the future, bro.
Same here. I appreciate you coming on the podcast. I haven't got to talk to you in a long time, so I enjoyed this.
Yes, sir. Me too.
Have a good night.
You too.
Hey, before we go, I'd like to take a minute to thank one of our sponsors. Omni Real-Time Locating System is a company I've been working closely with for years. I'm proud to be a part of this innovative team that's developed the best real-time locating system on the market today for your jail or prison. Omni's PREA-compliant real-time monitoring technology is the very best way to track and record your inmates' locations, their movements, their interactions throughout every square inch of your correctional facility. Imagine getting an alarm the second an escape happens, or an alert that lets you know when an inmate's heart rate drops below a set level. To learn more about Omni, go to www.omnirtls.com. That's omnirtls.com. Or you can click on today's show notes to get in the information guide. Omni Real-Time Locating System is a powerful tool specifically designed for the modern correctional professional. If you haven't done so, please take a moment to like my podcast, or better yet, hit the subscribe button so that you'll be notified when the next episode comes out. Thanks for listening, and let's be safe out there. If you enjoy these podcasts, the best way to support the Prisoner Officer Podcast is to share these episodes with your friends or family on social media. Let me invite you to visit www.theprisonofficer.com. If you haven't already, check out the Prison Officer Podcast on Facebook and click that little follow button. Or leave us a message, or better yet, leave us a review. And if you're listening to us on Apple Podcast, Google, or Spotify, please click the subscribe button. Till next time, I'm Mike Cantrell. Watch your back, and please take care of each other out there behind those walls.